Robert Plank Show, episode 362, Acuity Scheduling. Automate and manage your online appointments, sell coaching without a website, and streamline your productivity with Gavin Zuchlinski. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. We're here today with the founder of Acuity Scheduling. His name is Gavin Zuchlinski, and Acuity Scheduling is the slickest way for businesses to automate and manage their appointments online, allowing clients to schedule themselves. So, Mr. Gavin, how are things today?
They're great. Thank you for having me on here. How are you doing?
I am doing super fantastic. I'm glad that you are on. I'm kind of blown away here because you're like a brand name, right? There's all these like online schedulers, and you're one of the top ones, and you're actually taking the time out to talk to me today. And so I'm really blown away by your tool and this whole idea in general of this kind of online scheduler where instead of having to do all that back and forth between clients and say I want to do a coaching session and it's like, well, what day is good, what hour is good, what time
hmm
zone's good, gathering any extra information, and especially if we want to do like a lot of these like discovery calls or a lot of podcast interviews, and it's a huge time saving tool. So do you have like a usual spiel about Acuity Scheduling? Can you kind of like catch us all up and tell everyone like what this whole kind of concept is?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you nailed it pretty well there about what the pain points are and everything else. But for Acuity, I originally created it for my mom. She's a massage therapist, and I saw her just going back and forth with clients, like having to hear when somebody wanted to cancel their appointment about like Aunt Tilly's kidney stones and all the time that she would waste on that. And it was a big waste of time. So that's where Acuity came from, was to make it so that her clients could book their own appointments, fill out any forms, make payments in advance, and manage their own appointments so that she could spend less time on all of the logistics that go around her calendar and more time focusing on what she was best at. And then since her, it's grown to over 50,000 businesses that use Acuity to manage their day to day, and tons of different places. Like you're mentioning coaches and doing like discovery calls and sequences, and all of that is such a fantastic use for it and definitely a popular one. But then we have people all over, like the ones that I originally thought about, like massage therapists and spas and salons. And then a bunch that I really didn't think about much before. Like there's a cupcake delivery place and bowling alleys and all of that, because a lot of these things come down to like um, the logistics, how things tie together, availability and booking, and there are so many opportunities that it's definitely a much bigger space and a much harder problem than I had initially anticipated when starting Acuity in around 2007.
Super awesome, yeah. And there's like a couple of things in there that you mentioned that are super awesome, and it just before I can't believe that I survived this long without it. It's sort of like, can you imagine surviving without like a cell phone or Gmail or Google Calendar? I mean, all these things that we take for granted now, and it kind of makes me think of like like times when if I call like a doctor or a dentist, or I call to get my car serviced, and then I'm kind of like looking at my calendar and they're like, oh, like, can you do Wednesday? And I look at my calendar, I'm like, well, not really, but if that's all you got, I guess I'll clear my whole dang like schedule. And it seems
Mhm.
like, just from like a customer point of view, when I kind of have to do that sort of the old-fashioned way of scheduling, it's like it's very inefficient. And sometimes I have to clear a whole day just to make one appointment work. And if we ran our businesses that way, it's like, well, geez, we might have to clear whole days just to have that one meeting, or like with the cupcake thing, like that one sort of delivery. So it's just, I mean, it saves like at least 2 or 3 hours a week just in that back and forth, just in the clearing of the schedules. And then you mentioned in there like cancellations or having to reschedule is a
Mhm.
whole other thing. And then also just like collecting the information, right? Because then you say, okay, well, I've figured out like what time and date I want to meet with someone, whatever a meeting is, if it's a massage therapist or a location. But then I actually have to collect the information. I have to figure out what
Mhm.
phone number, what Skype username to call, what physical address to be at. And so it kind of collects all that. And then I think the thing that really sold me on this whole idea of an online scheduler was the fact that, number one, it connects to my calendaring system. I use Google Calendar. But then number
Mhm.
two is it handles the conflicts. So it's like if I already have something on the books, then it will when it shows my available time slots, it will work around that and it won't make me double booked. And then when an appointment does get on there, and adds it to my calendar, so I can kind of see both ways. I can see like what I have before someone was making an appointment, and then when they do make an appointment, I don't have to go and check a different location. It just shows up there in my Google Calendar. So I know I'm kind of gushing or geeking out or whatever about this, but like it's such a freaking amazing tool. And so but I know that Acuity kind of has some features that other online schedulers don't. So I'm really curious about what makes Acuity the best. I mean, what are some kind of cool things that you guys have that make you completely unique?
Yeah, and before I get into that, you made a point at the very beginning about the benefits of using online scheduling, and like just saving the time directly is like a pretty obvious one, and that's part of the reason why I built it. But over time, it's been interesting to see the secondary benefits. Like we did a survey and or analysis of our data and noticed that about 35 to 40% of appointments are booked when a businesses are closed. So the time that it's most convenient for you as a customer to book is probably when the business is closed because you're working during the day too. So that way you don't have to, clear out your schedule for the appointment itself, but also it's way more convenient. And similar to that is that we have heard anecdotes from many different businesses that after they do online scheduling, they find that because it's so much more convenient for customers, that their business ends up growing because of that. Like there was a waxing place that told me they have been a long time customer of Acuity. Several other places started around the same time as them nearby, not offering online scheduling. They totally admitted that they were maybe not the best one around, or at least not better than everybody else, but they ended up succeeding and opening up a second location. They felt because it was so much more convenient, like it was just the thing that tipped the scales in their favor. So yeah, totally is it's a no-brainer for businesses on the primary benefits, but also the secondary ones too. And then once you get into the features too, Acuity has been around for a while, and we take a lot of pride in listening to everybody and improving things because of that. So there's so much to do in scheduling, and that's really our focus. Like you're mentioning, connecting to all the different calendars, like with Acuity, connecting to your personal Google account and maybe your business's Office 365 or Exchange accounts. That way you can work around things during your workday, iCloud, and all of that too. Like funneling all these different calendars into one place that you have a central place to view your appointments, send them off to, have clients manage their own thing. So, sending reminder emails too. So with Acuity, you can send multiple different reminder emails. So what we see a lot for like podcast hosts like yourself is it's a fantastic way you can set it up where somebody can book an appointment with you, fill out all the forms and like their Skype name and everything else, and then you can set up a series of emails. Like first one, like, hey, check out our show, like take a listen to an episode, give us a 5-star review. Next one, hey, we're recording your episode tomorrow. Don't forget to have like good lighting and a headset available. And then like another one, hey, we're recording in an hour. Don't forget and don't stand me up now. Sending text messages, that type of thing too. So I know I have such a hard time keeping track of competitors because there are a lot of them. But we've been around for a while, and I've heard from other folks too that we're probably one of the more full-featured ones. But a lot of it, I think, drives from what I personally feel like the product should be. That it should be built for somebody who's a business, a professional, that you want to put your professional face forward. So not only should it look nice, but it should also be something that promotes your brand, not ours. Being able to customize that, put your logos on there, your colors, and pretty much customize everything directly into your website, so it doesn't say that it's Acuity Scheduling on it, but it really just looks like a part of your site and your brand. And that gets down to customizing the emails and everything else, like I mentioned before, showing your brand. And then because I know so many people are using Acuity for businesses, not just the easy parts and being able to accurately model their availability so it can be as hands-off as possible, connecting with a lot of different things too, like in the podcast case too. We see a lot of folks set it up so that you can integrate with like Zoom or GoToMeeting or a ton of other different tools and accounting tools and mailing lists and all of that. So when somebody schedules an appointment, you have that series of drip emails going. But as soon as they scheduled, it also created the meeting in, say, Zoom and sent that link out inside of their email that's included in all of them so that they know exactly where to go and where to record. And gave them the option to like join your mailing list at the same time. And all of that is done hands off so that you can just focus on your business instead of all of those logistics and maybe those manual things that you would have done before. And maybe not for a podcast, but accept payment too, because as a business, you got to make money. So connect with your existing, I don't know, Square or PayPal or Stripe account, whatever you use, and have people pay or just reserve with their credit cards that you can charge it later. But make money so that the less, my goal is really the less that you have to do with logistics on the appointments, so that the more you can just focus on what you're really good at, the happier I'll be with the product too. So we've built a lot into that over time.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, you are blowing me away so far in this conversation, just as far as like the number of especially offline businesses and like different kinds of businesses that
Hmm.
I never would have imagined could use this kind of service. Because like, I mean, I like I said, like I thought in my head maybe like coaches and podcasters is kind of
Hmm.
where it that the train of thought kind of stopped for me. But then just as far as, yeah, like people can choose their own slot. People tend to not, or a huge chunk of customers don't schedule things during business hours, so you kind of
Hmm.
have that automated. Hooks up to all the calendars, and then the email reminder thing, that was like super huge for me, especially when like getting to know your software and getting to know just these online schedulers in general, because like I would have these appointments for coaching calls and podcast interviews, but sometimes there would be no shows. And I started to
Hmm.
think, okay, well, either I could be kind of angry about it or kind of figure out, oh, well, maybe half my people cancel. I got to like do double the more booking. But then I thought, well, what's the reason that they aren't showing up? And then I realized that when I emailed them and asked, they'd say like, oh, I forgot, or I didn't know that this was coming up. And I realized like, oh yeah, even though I'm hooked up to a Google Calendar, not everyone is. And so just having those kind of email reminders was super helpful, because, especially because, like you said, you can have a whole sequence, or you could have it staggered like days before. So, for
Hmm.
example, for like the podcast interviews, think I have a reminder like maybe 2 days before, like 23 hours before, just
Hmm.
saying like, remember we have our interview. Make sure to have your Skype on, your Skype settings. Here's the username I'm going to be calling you from. And then I think like something like an hour before or 10 minutes before or something like that. So at the very least, even if they totally space and they're not at home, at least they cancel on me. That way, I'm not waiting around to show before for that interview. So super huge, just like a simple idea, but hooked into all this whole system is super awesome. So the reminder emails are real great there. And then as far as Acuity scheduling in particular, I think I heard someone mention you maybe like a month or so ago just about this whole idea of you can have someone book an appointment with you and then also charge money. And you mentioned there
Hmm.
that you can hook them into your PayPal and things like that. But I have to admit, I haven't used that part of your software. So can you kind of like walk us through that? Like what actually is possible? Like do we need to like set something up special with like a Stripe
Hmm.
account or with PayPal, or like is there a price range? Like maybe kind of walk us through like this whole idea of having people book an appointment and then paying you for it.
Yeah, and that gets really powerful and has really grown over time because so we'll connect with a bunch of different payment processors, Stripe, PayPal, Square, Braintree, Authorize.net, just to give you as many different options for where you can go for processing. And we don't take any fees out of that or anything else. So it's just whatever you have arranged with your credit card processor. And then when you have appointments, there's a ton of different ways that you could set it up too. It's really the preference of the business. We see some people like to make sure that everybody booking an appointment pays them at the time of booking in advance. Not everybody's into that. Some people just want a deposit, make it optional if the customer wants the convenience of paying online in advance. I know I personally do. And then as you start to get down into it too, and the other popular one too is just verify the credit card and keep it on file securely vaulted away. So if the person does no show, you can charge them the no show fee and give them the option at the time of appointment of just booking with or paying with the card on file. With that too. Uh, as a business, you're probably doing a lot more than just selling appointments as well. So we do give a really basic product store, but one of the bigger things that you can do through there is sell packages of appointments. So if you are a coach, you can sell like several month packages or gift certificates if you're a massage therapist to give to somebody else. And one of the new features that I'm really excited about too are subscriptions and payment plans. So if you are a coach and you have your, I don't know, $10,000 coaching package for the next 6 months, somebody could pay for that in installments automatically charged with a card on file so that you don't even have to think about that. And also you could set up, say club memberships of uh, I don't know, like get 3 massages a month for $200, and you could have their cards billed automatically so that they can manage that on their own. They'll get a special link and a code that they can use to redeem for their appointments, and all of that balance is tracked automatically for you. So I know it can be such a pain in the butt if you say like run packages or gift certificates to keep track of which ones are valid, which ones aren't, how many appointments are remaining on their package, like who needs to be charged for the subscription this month. And again, hands off, all taken care of for you, all with your existing payment processor too. So it extends beyond just appointments and booking, but those other ways that you can start to earn revenue for your business too that tie into your appointments.
Super cool. I mean, it sounds like you guys thought of everything, and I was even impressed when I heard that. Okay, you can charge like one off for one meeting, but I mean packages and recurring and
Hmm.
billing them later. I mean, you guys thought of everything there. And so the next thing that I'm really kind of curious about, you mentioned in there that you can hook it up to like a Zoom or some kind of a webinar. So if I'm hearing you right, so you can have like these office hours, and then someone chooses a time slot, and not only does it create the appointment in Acuity, the appointment in the calendar, the reminder emails, but also goes out and creates an actual webinar session. So then literally all you have to do is show up. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's totally one of my favorite features. One of the interesting cases that I saw was there was a sales team that used Acuity. So they had one account with, I don't know, like 10 salespeople under each of them, set their hours of availability. Then they had a scheduling page that they would send prospects to. They had all of their availability pooled together. So when a prospect went to the site, they just saw all of their combined hours. And in sort of a round robin way, whatever time slot they picked, somebody was assigned to it. And now, after it was routed to their calendar, they had GoToMeeting automatically create a meeting in there. So before, that was something that for every time a prospect called in, they would have to wrangle and try to find which salespeople were available at the time, and then schedule that inside of GoToMeeting. So it was taking 10 or 15 minutes per prospect call that they were able to automate, because now you create that private meeting link, all uniquely created for your appointments. And again, like the basic things: if somebody cancels, we delete that meeting for you automatically. If somebody reschedules their appointments, it's moved automatically. So you don't have to think about as much. So it does get as simple as what you're saying of they take care of all the scheduling. The video conferencing links are created automatically for you, and you just sort of have to show up and click on your link at the time for the appointment.
Dang, I mean, super cool. And is that all built in? That whole idea of like everyone kind of pooling their hours and doing the round robin and showing like all the availability at once? Is that all kind of built in out of the box?
Yeah, since not everybody is interested in having that type of thing, it's an option that you can turn on. By default, like say after you're growing and it's more than just you and you have a couple other people on staff, when clients go to book their appointment, they'll start out by choosing their service if you have more than one, or whatever type of appointment they want if you have more than one, and then it'll show whoever on staff can do that type of appointment. And if there's more than one, it'll give them the option of like, I don't care, just pick any available one, which does that pooling of availability. And then you can also force it to just always do that pooling, which is what that sales team did that I mentioned, just to make it as simple as possible for a prospect. So I think in their case too, because in Acuity you can send out direct links to like a specific person or a specific type of appointment. I think what they ended up doing was doing a direct link to like an initial call. So, and they had all of their salespeople on that type of appointment with everything pooled. So all the customers saw were the dates and times that they were available, and they just had to pick one. And all of that was just sort of like magically taken care of for them behind the scenes.
Super cool. So, So like we kind of are kind of bouncing around and talking about some of these like
Mhm.
crazy features and things that you guys
Mhm.
offer. Have you seen like is there like a real big thing that gets people to switch to you guys? Because the reason why I ask is because it took me a few years to even be convinced that I needed this online scheduler, and I should have done it years and years ago.
Mhm.
And then I used one service that it seemed like after I got maybe like 10 or 20 appointments, it couldn't handle it. It got slower and slower. So I moved to a different one, which was a step up, except for they're kind of starting to add in some features that I don't like and I can't turn off. And an
Mhm.
example of that is a rescheduling button. So like the place I'm at now, I'm not going to trash talk
Mhm.
anyone, but like someone will have an appointment scheduled and the reminder email will have a big fat reschedule button, and I'm like, sometimes I don't want to reschedule them, and I kind of reached out to them and not haven't really gotten a response. And so I'm pretty loyal to like the services I use, but I'm kind of like a little curious about like what else is out there. So having kind of said all that, is there like a big reason for people to switch over to Acuity Scheduling if they're already using something existing?
Yeah, it really depends on the person. The couple of common reasons that I hear are that they want to accept payments, since there's a bunch of schedulers who just focus on picking a time slot, and that's all that they really do. A lot of people are drawn to like the integrations in Power because some services are really just more of like a glorified contact form more than something that you can actually use to run your business. And the other big one is like you're mentioning is just customization. Like I personally feel I personally really dislike it when I go to schedule an appointment with somebody and like the scheduler's name is popping up in the corner and the bottom and like asking me to create my own scheduling page with them and everything else, because that doesn't make you look professional. It just makes you look like you're I don't know, using somebody's free service and that type of thing. And then sort of after you let people look a little bit more professional and customize things, you do see a lot of what you're saying is that businesses, you're trying to coax your customers into different ways. Like maybe you're a little bit more rigid with your schedule and you don't want to like allow last minute bookings. So we have built in a lot of different customization, and it's really just based off of requests and things that we have heard over time since we have been around for a while, growing slowly. It has helped that we're able to bring a lot of that in there so that you can like say disable customers from rescheduling their own appointments, or like maybe allow them to reschedule but not before like 72 hours before their appointment or something like that. And we just allow pretty much like full customization over emails, over the intake forms, the information that you collect from customers before their appointment, so that you can like really customize everything, like down to if you're a super techie guy getting into CSS and a lot of the other things too. And we have a really powerful API for that too. So I think just like the payments and some of those other things definitely are like the big features, but the long tail of people end up switching just because they like the power and flexibility and like availability. It's surprising. It has taken us a long time to get as good as we are with being able to set availability, but just being, flexible to say like, oh, this Saturday I want to accept more appointments, or like I want to be closed this day, or like I want to add a 3 hour break in the middle of my day and go an hour later on this one. It's a really common thing over time. So we try to make that as easy as possible. And sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get that out of other services, from what I hear.
Yeah, and I think that some of these other services maybe they've started to catch up to you guys, but I definitely like the whole idea. Like some days I just want to have that day free to just do a bunch of appointments, or some days I know like I have this big deadline coming up, like I want to just close off a couple of days. So really helpful stuff there. And so you mentioned that like you guys have been around a while, and you've been catching on more and more. Have you
Hmm.
come across any sort of like any growing pains or any difficulties in getting your company to where it is?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I originally created it for my mom around 2007. But when I did that, it was a side project that I had zero idea of building it into a proper business. I was actually doing web development at the time and was just hoping to get some more clients for that. So I didn't try to market it or grow it, and it had just grown organically from Google search results and referrals and everything else until around 2013 when it it became big enough that I had to make the choice between a day job that I absolutely loved and doing Acuity full time. And obviously, I chose Acuity. And after that is when I guess the real growth actually started. It's sort of like the second origin of the company when I stepped away from my day job and went like, all right, now I got 100% of my time that I can focus on Acuity and focus on making it better. So let me tackle a lot of these things that like I was really focused on making the product better, but had an absolute crap marketing page and like catching up with all that, catching up with copy. And now too, we're starting with advertising and everything else. So what used to be just me is now a team of over 20 people around the world, everybody working remotely too. And as you grow with people, that's always a growing pain too. But yeah, overall, I've been even happier with it as we've grown a lot faster, and I think we've started to catch on more in the last couple of years, just thanks to revamping and having a much more professional image with me having more time. It has had some interesting growing pains because of that, but mostly internally on like us as people scaling up, like how we do training for support and like adding more and more servers and everything else.
Well, those sounds like good problems to have, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather have the problem of how can I handle all this new stuff than trying to scramble. And likewise, how the reason why you quit your job was because this business had taken off, and it's like you kind of had to get caught up to the business, and I'd rather have that problem than having the business trying to get caught up to me, right? So I mean, crazy awesome stuff. And so moving forward, I mean, do you guys have any like cool features or new things coming out that you don't mind sharing? I mean, and if you don't, like as an example, like you mentioned a lot about how you like how you guys aren't big on the branding back to Acuity, right? Everything can be customized, and so
Mhm.
having sort of thought about that, like, have you guys looked into any kind of like white labeling, or like if someone could like set up a site that like looks like is Acuity scheduling but under a different name, anything like that, or anything else in general that you guys are working on?
Oh man, we are always working on a ton of things, and we're constantly doing interviews to improve the UX and get feature ideas and listening to what everybody is doing. But all of those stay under wraps until you get to see them. But regardless, if you were, uh, I hope everybody's happy with where Acuity is today, even though we're constantly improving, adding more integrations, adding more features and flexibility, all really just focused on making appointment scheduling better and that idea of less hands on your logistics so that you can spend more time focusing on your business itself. Everything is really geared around that. And regardless, too, if you are a techie guy and you did want to say, like, build your own scheduling page in some magical ways that maybe we're not doing now, or like we might never do in the future because of some niche needs, we do offer a really powerful API and try to make development so that you can build on top of Acuity as easy and powerful uh, as possible too, if you're a techie person anyway.
Awesome stuff. And if you're not, you can always hire someone to get whatever stuff done that you need to get done. So great. And so kind of as we're winding this down, I'm really curious about the sort of packages that you guys offer, because I know that like a lot some of these calendaring services, like they'll have like a free like either a free level with a couple of appointments, or like a trial, or like different options. So I mean, what's the pricing and the packaging like with you guys?
Yeah, so we definitely do offer a free plan. That one is a little bit more limited as far as features go and the ability to customize the branding and accept payments. So what we tend to find is people gravitate more towards our paid plans are still really affordable. There's three plans. The highest one is $34 a month, which just lets you add more calendars and staff primarily. Second level one, which is just a few less staff and calendars below that, but does allow you to do text messaging. That's $19 a month. And then the lowest level paid plan is the emerging entrepreneur one, which gives you all of that control over the branding and being able to accept payments, and a ton of other cool features and packages and things like that I've mentioned before too. That's only $10 a month.
Awesome. And for I mean, for 30 cents a day, I mean, why wouldn't you do this to get your time back, get your life back? And I didn't even know that you can send text message reminders with your service. So I mean, there's all kinds of features in there that we didn't even get to dig into that even I didn't know. So
Mhm.
I kind of am going to go back into that Acuity scheduling account I created just for us to meet and kind of see what other cool things there are compared to what I'm using now. So if people heard our conversation, they like what they've been hearing, they want to give Acuity scheduling a try, where should they go to do that?
Yeah, the best place to go is check out acuityscheduling.com, ACUITY scheduling.com, and you can check out the service. Definitely email into our support, or if you just wanted to reach out to me directly, the easiest way is just search for me, Gavin Zuchlinski, on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to chat with anybody if they have questions.
Awesome stuff. Well, thanks for being so accessible, not just to me, but for people reaching out on LinkedIn. So, everyone, make sure to go to LinkedIn and look up Gavin Zuchlinski. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. And most importantly, this is more important than anything else we talked about so far. Go to acuityscheduling.com, get your free trial account, use it. You're going to love it. And once you do love it, once you make it a part of your business, you're going to want to upgrade to whatever plan makes sense for you. If it's for the emerging entrepreneur or it's for the whole team, whatever your needs are, you're going to need to use this to save at least a couple of hours per week with scheduling, with rescheduling, with getting things hooked up to your appointment. If you use it for the charging for appointments or hooking up to webinars, I'm sure there's at least a handful of things that you'll see about Acuity scheduling that will excite you, and you'll never go back to the old way again. I mean, just like in the same way, you'd never go back to like a pen and paper for your calendar. It's the modern day and age. You have it all synced up, so why not be modern with your business as well? And go to acuityscheduling.com and get an account. And I want to thank you, Mr. Gavin, for stopping by and for kind of sharing with us all these interesting ways that businesses are using online scheduling, the features that you have, and then kind of your thought process all kind of weaved into that on, that you made this out of a real need. It's not just something you made up. Your mom needed this, other businesses need it, and everyone listening needs it as well. So acuityscheduling.com. And thanks, Mr. Gavin, for stopping by and sharing some knowledge.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Subscribe to us right now while it's still fresh on your mind at robertplank.com/iTunes, or just search Robert Plank in your iTunes app.